It's not a true story that is being told to show us something. And what the author didn't put, hold on, Chris. What the author didn't put in there was they hung out for a year and got complacent. That would be part of the story if that's the message of the story. It's not the message of the story because it's not in there.
No, tell me one other story like that.
I think of this type of apologetic when I think of the story of the golden calf. These are a bunch of people who have been recently freed from slavery. They've seen miracle after miracle after miracle. The very day that they made the golden calf, that very day they were eating manna that God gave them. Their God, Yahweh, sent magical manna and quail from heaven. They're eating it that very day. And then they decide that they're going to make a golden calf to worship a different God. That doesn't make logical sense. Nobody would do that. That doesn't reflect reality in humanity or anyone.
You're saying complacency doesn't exist.
I'm saying that when you are actively experiencing a miracle...
But you can't come complacent in that?
If you just follow the story, like it was like the miracles got them out of Egypt, then they God parted the Red Sea, and then they beat the Amalekites because of a miracle. They got manna miraculously. Then there was this big show on the mountain, this other miracle, sort of like crazy weather thing with horns and stuff. They were all at the base of the mountain, not touching it, because if they touch it, they will be killed. So they're really careful about that. And then in that moment, you think they suddenly became complacent and were like, I don't think that God exists anymore. Let's make a calf and then claim that it got us out of Egypt.
You're saying in that moment, like you can't prove that it's in that moment. We don't know the time frames of this happening. We can't know that.
Yeah, it's because
you weren't there. Like this story is not an omniac. It's not an omniac. You're saying they're stating straight facts. They're not stating.
Well, you think it was 3 years later? You think it was 3 years later?
It's not like an omniac. I don't know the time frame. They were just writing the events down. They're not thinking about the time frame or anything like that.
We know how long Moses was up there. I mean, I can go and look it up. But Moses goes up and then he comes down, then he goes back up again. He's not down there for up there for too terribly long, and that's when they get annoyed that he's not there. They go, I don't know what happened with this Moses guy. The text doesn't tell us that it was like years later when they were sitting at the base of a mountain just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. It says something like, I feel like it was a month that he went up.
It was like 40 days and 40. It was supposed to be like 40 days. And 40 nights.
So your guess of the complacency, I think, is just not in the text, because you're adding something. So if we don't add something to it, right? It doesn't reflect humanity.
But you're acting like this isn't just a story. You're saying like it's an omniac where they recorded this event happened. Like you know when the football team, like this team annihilated, you wouldn't see that in omniac. You say this team won 57-7. The Bible is not an omniac. It's more like a newspaper. It's meant to draw your attention. It's trying to draw your attention. It's trying to pull on your heartstrings.
It's making like it's a sensationalistic story. So did it not happen?
It's probably allegory.
Oh, so yeah, I don't think it happened either. I think that it's a myth.
Meant to make a point. It's not meant to
fairy tale.
Yeah,
it's not an omniac. Like I said,
Chris,
it's not an omniac.
Chris, it's not an omniac. Everybody agrees it's not an omniac. But what we do know is that it's a fictional story now that doesn't reflect how humans would actually behave. And your claim was it shows us how humans actually behave. And I'm saying that I disagree.
You're saying in a short period of time.
It's not a true story that is being told to show us something. And what the author didn't put, hold on, Chris, what the author didn't put in there was they hung out for a year and got complacent. That would be part of the story if that's the message of the story. It's not the message of the story because it's not in there.
No, show me one other story like that. You're saying the author would have put that in the story if it was like, if he wasn't just trying to make a point, he would have put that after.
Yeah, like if it was a story about people becoming complacent, then he would indicate that somehow, you would think, if he was a half-decent author. He would be like, and then they waited and they just enjoyed the stuff. They were living there for like 3 years. It got a little bit dull.
Why would it put the time in there? It wouldn't put the time in there. It would have just
they would indicate it
like it does.
Why would they put in there if the lesson was they became complacent?
Name one historical account that's not an omniac that you don't have to read into it.
So there's an Aesop's fable, right? We all know this Aesop's fable where there's a rabbit and a tortoise, and they're going to have a race. And we all think that the rabbit's going to win, right? But the rabbit runs and then takes a nap, and then runs and then takes a nap, and the turtle keeps on overtaking the rabbit. The tortoise eventually wins because the rabbit kept on taking naps. So then it says, slow and steady wins the race. We all know this story, right, Chris?
We do.
Yeah. So did you know that that story is actually about getting like a good night's sleep and not burning the candle at both ends? Yeah, because people don't know this. It's not really written in the story. But the thing is that the rabbit was working a full-time job, was also partying every night, and was not properly training for the race. So the real lesson of the story is that the rabbit should have prepared more, not made so many commitments, so that they could run and not have to take the breaks. You remember that that's the lesson of that story, Chris?
That was not the lesson of that story.
No, because that's not in the text. It says nothing of that in the text. What it says in the text is that the rabbit stopped and was very cocky and wasn't consistent. And so slow and steady wins the race. Be consistent. That's the lesson. So in the story of the golden calf, we don't get that they were complacent, that they were waiting a really long time in the desert eating their manna, and they, eventually that's going to cause complacency. There's no evidence of that. So there's no reason to add that to the story as if that's going to be in the meaning of the story, Chris. Just like there's no reason to add anything to the tortoise and the hare. That's already a story that's telling us what it's telling us because the authors put information in that story so that we would understand it. That's it.
Okay.